You remember that video we dropped last week, right? About that alleged coup plot against President Tinubu of Nigeria. The one where we told you 16 military officers had been arrested. Well, it looks like the other shoe just dropped because Nigeria just confirmed what a lot of people were already suspecting. On October 23rd, 2025, President Tinubu fired, pretty much every service chief in the country. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, gone. The heads of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, all of them replaced. And the timing, now get this, it's just days after the government was swearing up and down that there was no coup plot. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. When we first covered this, the Nigerian military called it fake news. Defense headquarters said those arrested officers, that was just about indiscipline and career stagnation. The government told everyone to move along, nothing to see here. But Nigerians, they weren't buying it, not for a second. From Lagos to Kano, in WhatsApp groups, on Twitter, everyone was asking the same question. If there is no coup plot, why did you cancel the Independence Day parade? Why arrest 16 officers, including a guy who just got back from military training in China? Why fire the entire military leadership? The reactions online, they've been explosive. You've got some Nigerians saying the coup rumor was true. It's relief, but it's also vindication. Then you have got others who are deeply suspicious, asking what really sparked this burst of executive energy. The opposition party, the ADC, they are demanding answers. They are calling this move abrupt and worrisome. They are warning that Nigeria's situation could start to look a lot like what's happening in Chad and right across the Sahel, where 8 countries have fallen to military coups since 2020. Even ordinary folks on the street are split, some saying that he acted decisively. Others are wondering, is this really about security, or is it about something much darker happening behind those closed doors? So in this episode, we are going to dive deep. What really triggered this shakeup? How did the street seem to know the truth before the palace admitted it? Why does what happens next in Nigeria? Why could that decide the future of democracy for all of West Africa? Let's get into it. So let's get this straight. Last week, the Nigerian military says no coup plot, fake news, misinformation, their usual lines. Then, on October 23rd, 2025, President Tinubu fires virtually every military service chief in Nigeria. Both of those things can't be true. So either the government was lying then, or something happened behind closed doors that forced their hands now. Let's walk through the timeline because the contradictions are striking. On September 29th, the federal government announces they are cancelling Nigeria's Independence Day parade. The official reason, administrative convenience, nothing more. Then in early October, Defense Headquarters quietly let it slip that 16 military officers has been detained. The official explanation, indiscipline, career stagnation, failure to pass promotion exams, just routine military discipline. The reports were everywhere. Sahara reporters and other media outlets revealed these weren't just disgruntled officers. These were alleged coup plotters, 16 soldiers from captain all the way up to brigadier general, arrested for allegedly planning to overthrow President Tinubu. And the alleged ringleader who had just gotten back from specialized combat training in China and was working in the National Security Advisor's office. And how did Defense Headquarters respond to that? On October 19th, Brigadier General Toko Guzo called the coup allegations completely false and malicious. He said the investigation was just a routine internal process. There was no coup plot, move along. But Nigerians didn't move along because just 4 days later, President Tinubu did something unprecedented. He fired General Christopher Musa, the Chief of Defense Staff. he replaced the chief of army, the navy, and the air force. In one sweep, Tinubu dismantled the entire military command structure. The government that said that nothing happened had just acted like everything happened. But what really happened in those few days? And why did the Nigerian public seem to know the truth before the government even admitted it? To understand that, you have to look at what Nigerians were saying, why their leaders were staying silent. Now, this is the fascinating part, because while the government was busy denying everything, Nigerian social media was on fire. From Kano to Lagos, in WhatsApp groups, on X, ordinary Nigerians were connecting the dots that officials insisted didn't exist. And they were right, because within hours of Tinubu's announcement, the Nigerian X space just exploded. One user posted something like, "So the rumor about the coup was true then," calling it a very good development because Nigeria cannot have another military rule. That statement was everywhere. Relief, yeah, but also vindication. All the people who have been called conspiracy theorists suddenly look like prophets. Another user observed, "This means there was indeed a coup attempt." They noted that when it's time to seize power, people will do it. Doesn't matter what tribe or religion. That comment, it really captured that anxiety just beneath the surface. Tensions, power struggles, the recognition that loyalty has its limits, but not everyone was relieved. One ex-user asked sarcastically, what suddenly inspired this burst of executive energy? Was it a midnight revelation or a nudge from somewhere we are not supposed to mention? The skepticism was thick because for a lot of Nigerians, the timing just raised more questions than it answered. If there was no coup, why fire everyone? And if there was a coup, why lie about it in the first place? And look, the reactions weren't just about the coup. They revealed this much deeper frustration. One user questioned strengthening the military while the government is negotiating with terrorists. Another demanded that the new chiefs have to be mandated to crush terrorists and bandits without messing around. This comment showed Nigerians aren't just worried about coups. They are desperate for security. Bandits, kidnappers, those threats kill more Nigerians every single day than any coup ever could. But this social media reaction, it wasn't just noise. It was pointing to something the government couldn't ignore, because while Nigerians were debating online, one opposition party was demanding answers in public, and their questions, they could expose the government's biggest vulnerability. The African Democratic Congress, believe it or not, the ADC, is now the opposition party in Nigeria at this moment. They did something pretty rare in Nigerian politics. They just refused to play along, because while other parties were quiet, the ADC publicly demanded what everyone was thinking. Tell us the truth about what happened. On October 23rd, just hours after Tinubu announced the military shakeup, the ADC National Publicity Secretary, Bolaji Abdullahi, he released this statement that just cut right through the official story. The party called the reshuffle abrupt and worrisome, especially given all the rumors of an attempted coup. Abdullahi said the government's reaction to this dangerous rumor had, and I am quoting here, outright confusion in a matter that required crystal clarity. Basically, you are either lying or you are confused, and neither one is good. The ADC raised the questions the government didn't want to answer. The service chiefs who just got sacked, they were appointed pretty recently. Some had been serving for less than 2 years. Why would Tinubu fire military leaders he personally selected so recently? The ADC argued this kind of decision could not have been taken without strong reasons. But the ADC's concerns went way beyond Nigeria. The party explicitly warned about development in the neighborhoods of Chad and the Sahel states. Remember, since 2020, 8 countries in West and Central Africa have had military takeovers. The ADC saw the pattern and they feared Nigeria might be next. The opposition party didn't just question the timing, They questioned the government's priorities. They noted that insecurity is still spreading. Terrorist groups are making a comeback. Bandits are reigning supreme. And yet, the administration's attention, it appears fully focused on regime politics rather than securing the lives of ordinary Nigerians. The ADC finished with a demand. The federal government must address the issue transparently and reassure Nigerians that our democracy is not under threat. The ADC's questions, this wasn't just political posturing. They were touching on Nigeria's most dangerous reality. Because while politicians were arguing about transparency, Nigeria's security situation was spiraling out of control. And that's the context that makes this military shakeup either a masterstroke or a catastrophic gamble. Here's what Nigeria's new service chiefs are inheriting. Just picture this: a military that is deployed in 2/3 of the country's states, fighting multiple security threats all at once. Meanwhile, over 2,200 Nigerians were killed by insurgents and bandits in just the first half of 2025. This isn't a security challenge, it's a national emergency. Start with the Northeast. Boko Haram and Islamic State, West African province, we call them ISWAP. They've been fighting the military for over a decade. But in 2025, these groups launched intensified assaults. They are capturing strategic towns near Lake Chad. They are proving they are far from being defeated. Now, move to the Northwest. An estimated 30,000 armed bandits are operating across Zamfara and the states around it. What started as resource disputes, it has evolved into these massive organized criminal networks. They are capable of mass abductions, large-scale violence. In just the last few years, bandits have displaced more than 1 million people from rural villages. They've shut down schools. They've turned entire farming regions into war zones. The statistics, they are brutal because, according to the National Human Rights Commission, at least 2,266 people were killed by bandits or insurgents during the first 6 months of 2025. That is already more than the total for all of 2024. Put it another way, more than 12 Nigerians are killed by armed groups every single day. The Nigerian military is stretched impossibly thin. Like I said, armed forces are deployed in 2/3 of Nigeria's 36 states. That deployment pattern, it doesn't show strength, it shows crisis. And this overstretch, it has consequences because equipment breaks down, soldiers go months without rest, morale suffers when your troops see their colleagues die, fighting the same enemies in the same places year after year after year. But Nigeria's crisis isn't happening in a bubble because across West Africa, a pattern is emerging, a pattern that should terrify anyone who values democracy. And Nigeria, Africa's largest democracy, just became the latest country where that pattern is starting to appear. Since 2020, 8 countries in West and Central Africa has fallen to military coups. 8. Mali, Burkina, Chad, Sudan, Gabon, and now Madagascar. One after another, soldiers have overthrown elected governments, and now for the first time, you are hearing those whispers about Nigeria, the region's supposedly giant. This wave of military takeovers, it didn't happen by accident. It happened because democratic governments have failed. They failed to deliver security. They failed to deliver prosperity. They failed to deliver justice. In Mali, civilians celebrated when the military seized power in 2020. They were hoping soldiers would succeed where the politicians had failed. In Niger, the revolutionary government there justified what they did by citing poor governance and security failures. The pattern is depressingly consistent. Democratic governments, they struggle with corruption. They struggle with security. Citizens lose faith. Regional bodies, they impose sanctions and nothing changes because the underlying problems, the poverty, the inequality, the weak institutions, they all remain. What makes this West African coup wave so dangerous is the contagion effect. After Mali's 2020 coup, Burkina Faso followed in 2022, then Niger in 2023, then Gabon in 2023. Each successful takeover, it just normalizes military intervention. It makes it easier for the next country. And then came the fracturing of ECOWAS. In January 2024, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they announced they were withdrawing from the Economic Community of West African States. That's officially effective January 2025. This was unprecedented because ECOWAS was created to prevent military rule, to promote cooperation. Now, 3 members, all controlled by military rulers, have just walked away. The sanctions ECOWAS imposed on these countries, they failed spectacularly. Border closures, they just hurt ordinary citizens, not these military rulers. This is why what's happening in Nigeria matters so much far beyond its borders. Because if Nigeria's military can't be trusted, if Africa's largest democracy faces a successful coup, West Africa doesn't just lose stability, it loses hope. So, who are these new military chiefs? And can they be trusted with Nigeria's future? He's Nigeria's new chief of defense staff. He's 57 years old from Ekiti State in the southwest region of Nigeria. He's a veteran of Operation Hadinkai in the northeast region. His promotion to Nigeria's top military post, the question a lot of people are asking is this: was he promoted for his loyalty or for his competence? General Oluyede's career, it suggests both. Born in 1968, joined the Nigerian Defense Academy. He specialized in the infantry corps, that's the army backbone for ground combat. His operational experience is substantial. He commanded the 27th Task Force Brigade, leading soldiers in active combat against Boko Haram and ISWAP. He also served as a commandant of the Amphibious Training School. The other new appointments, they follow a similar pattern. Major General W. Shaibu, he's the new Chief of Army Staff. Air Vice Marshal S.K. Aneke takes over at the Air Force. Rear Admiral Abbas, he assumes command of the Navy. All of them experienced officers, decades of service, but all of them, they are pretty much unknown to the Nigerian public. Now, compare this to the leadership that just got pushed out. General Christopher Musa, the displaced Chief of Defense Staff, he had impressive credentials. He won the Colin Powell Meritorious Award for Soldiering in 2022. His 18 months as the CDS, they saw major counter-insurgency operations. And yet, despite those achievements, Musa was removed. Nigerian civil society, they are skeptical. Some groups had actually urged President Tinubu not to remove the service chiefs. They argued it would disrupt the ongoing operations. One assessment really captured the concerns. The new service chiefs are seasoned officers, but they are also product of the same military structure that has faced criticism over security failures. Now, security experts are all emphasizing the need for cooperation. No single service can do this alone. The new chiefs must foster greater coordination so that all those complaints about ground forces not getting timely air support, so those become a thing of the past. These new chiefs, they face an impossible task: restore security, maintain loyalty, and prove they weren't just appointed to protect the president. But there's one question that haunts this entire story, a question the government still hasn't answered. Here is what we know for certain. 16 officers were detained in early October. A lieutenant colonel who had recently returned from training in China was identified as an alleged ringleader. The Independence Day parade was cancelled in late September, and within weeks, Nigeria's entire military leadership was replaced. Here's what we don't know: what actually happened, and that might be the most dangerous part of this story. Let's start with the coup plot itself. Were those 16 officers really planning a coup, or were they just victims of an internal power struggle? The official narrative keeps shifting. First, it was disciplinary action. Then, media reports surfaced, coup plot. Then, the military categorically denied any coup plot. Then, days later, the president sacks all the service chiefs. Every version contradicts the last. Then there is the timing. Why was the Independence Day parade cancelled? The official reason was administrative, but if intelligence knew about a coup plot targeting the parade, then cancelling it makes perfect sense. But the government gave administrative reasons, not security ones. And why? Why did the government deny everything, only to remove all the service chiefs just days later? What happened in that window? Did new intelligence come out? Did the president just lose confidence in his military leadership? The institutional questions are just troubling. Does this reshuffle mean there is a purge of officers who were deemed disloyal, or is this genuine security reform? If it's a purge, that means the president is prioritizing regime protection over military effectiveness. If it's reform, then why the lack of transparency? Now, the forward-looking questions, they are even more critical. Can the new chiefs deliver results where the last guy struggled? Will this strengthen or weaken military cohesion? And most importantly, what does this mean for Nigerian democracy? Has civilian control been strengthened, or has the military just been reminded of its own potential power? The last question, that's the one that matters the most. In countries where military stage successful coups, it's really their first attempt. If Nigeria's military leadership starts to believe that the civilian government is weak or illegitimate, future attempts might be better planned. And here's the fundamental tension. Nigerians want security. They want prosperity. But many have expressed so much frustration that they are suggesting they are not entirely opposed to dramatic change if democracy keeps failing. So, when civilians lose faith in democracy, that is when the door opens for authoritarianism. The next few months, they are going to review whether October 23rd, 2025 was the day Nigeria's democracy was strengthened, or the day the cracks really started to show. And the answer, it won't come from official statements. It won't come from presidential press releases. It will come from whether Nigerians feel safer in their communities, whether the military remains subordinate to civilian authority, and whether Africa's largest democracy can prove that civilian rule still delivers. Because if Nigeria stumbles, the message echoes across the entire continent. Democracy has failed. It failed in Africa's most populous country, in its largest economy, in its strongest regional power. If Nigeria can't make democracy work, then the question becomes, who can? Now, if you have watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa, where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view, where we bring you the kind of stories with the kind of details mainstream media does everything to avoid. Now, this is a follow-up episode to my episode on this topic, on this matter last week. But there is a saying, don't follow what the government says, follow what they do. Now, this has never been more true than now. The government denied it, but their actions is proving that there was indeed a coup plot attempt. And that is the $1 million question that every Nigerian is looking for the answers. Believe me, that answer is never going to come from this administration. Now, the question I want to ask you is this. What do you think really happened? Do you think there was indeed a military coup and the government is covering it up? Or do you think that this was a made-up hysteria in order to effect this service chief purge, this whole military restructure that the government has just implemented? Maybe that could be a strategy, who knows? But there are a lot of speculations out there, and go to the comment section and tell us your opinion. Now, if you want to see more of my videos, maybe consider to subscribe and turn on those notifications. I am your host, Ezike Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.